Welcome, one and all, to the Hammer Territory Podcast. My name is Shawn Coleman. Hope wherever you are and wherever you are listening, it is good to be back with you once again. And Stephen Tolbert, the offseason is officially here. Monday was a busy day for the Braves. It always seems like that if significant news, whether good or bad, happens for the Braves, 90% of the time it's on a freaking Monday, and today did not disappoint. But Stephen, before we get into that, always a pleasure to be with you here on the Hammer Territory Podcast, part of the Foul Territory family of podcasts. What's going on, Stephen?
Shawn, how are you, buddy? Yeah, man, we knew it was going to be a busy day. Listen, today was a deadline day. Deadlines always spur action is kind of the famous saying, and today was the day for all the team and player options for every player in baseball had to be decided by today. Today was also the day that all the qualifying offers had to be in to the league office by 5 p.m. today. And then all of that, of course, all coincided with the fact that free agency started at 5 p.m. today. So there was going to be a lot of resolution to a lot of questions throughout baseball, not just the Braves, but all around the league. We got some kind of league-wide interesting news as well on Garrett Cole, stuff like that. So it wasn't just a Braves day; it was kind of a day all around baseball. But yeah, we knew today would have news associated with it. We didn't expect that it would be this level of news. Quite honestly, the show we were planning on doing tonight was quite a bit different than one we're going to do because of what happened with some of the Braves transactions that went a much different way than what the general expectation was. So yeah, that's going to be the show tonight. We're going to focus on kind of a couple of shocking pieces of news that we found out today.
Yeah, it was supposed to be a day for answers, right? And a day for expected answers, and that was going to be a welcome development for this Braves organization after 2024, in which there were far more questions a lot of times than answers, or far more head scratching moments than, satisfying moments. And Monday did have plenty of answers, but it also did have one big development that unfortunately adds questions to the Braves off season. But let's get into it. Obviously coming into today, there were big decisions to be made on the Braves when it came to team options for 2025. The Braves exercised Marcelo Ozuna's $16 million option. Duh. They declined Luke Jackson's $7 million option. Duh. But then there also was the fact that the Braves also needed to extend qualifying offers to potential free agents. And they went ahead and did that to Max Fried. Duh. So I keep saying duh because those were the expected moves. Those were the moves that you expected to happen. But the newsworthy developments, if you will, were the fact that the Braves earlier on Monday declined an $8 million team option for Travis d'Arnaud. And we'll get into why that in particular is pretty shocking when it comes to the fact that Travis d'Arnaud was declined. But Stephen, when that decline occurred, there were some thoughts that we exchanged when we were talking in the Hammer Territory chat about, especially Alex Anthopoulos. I'll let you get a bit more into that. But we found out later on Monday there was a reason why Travis d'Arnaud's team option was declined, and that to me is the biggest news of the day, where unfortunately you end the day with more questions than answers.
Yeah, it was definitely shocking. I mean, Jeff Passan actually had it first. He tweeted it out before the Braves account even tweeted it out that they were going to decline Travis d'Arnaud's $8 million option. And everybody, including the beat writers, and a lot of it is because Alex actually said this in his postseason presser that they believe that all the options were going to get picked up, and so everybody's just assuming that Travis d'Arnaud's option was getting picked up. The Braves have had this, for the last, I don't know how many years, it seems like forever now, the Braves have had these kind of tandem catchers of two really good veteran catchers. And, it just felt like 2025, the Braves had another team option on d'Arnaud. It just felt like we were headed for another one of those where Murphy and d'Arnaud were going to be the guys. And $8 million for a guy as good as Travis, who's probably a starting caliber catcher in baseball still, even at his age, it just seemed like kind of a no-brainer. And, there are definitely reasons why I understand that they declined the option. But I'll be honest, as soon as I saw the news, I was kind of expecting one of the beat writers to come out and be like, yeah, the Braves declined the option, but they're already in talks with Travis to come back on a smaller deal. like this was all prearranged. That's what I was kind of expecting. And we didn't even get that. I mean, we got one of the, I think Mark Bowman of MLB.com came out and said, the Braves may circle back to Travis at the end of the offseason once they know a little bit more about their finance situation relative to the rest of the offseason. But it certainly wasn't a guarantee that they're going to circle back. I mean, it very well could just be the end for the Braves and Travis d'Arnaud. And outside of d'Arnaud retiring, I did not see that happening. Brian Snicker talks about Travis d'Arnaud like he's a family member. He is adored in that clubhouse, and his leadership. He's kind of one of the only veteran guys that have been around for this entire run or most of this run. He's highly respected. Outside of him retiring, I just didn't see this happening, and I get why. There are reasons why, which we'll get to in a minute. But just on the face of it, just as we saw the news break, unless they were going to immediately bring him back on a smaller deal, which it doesn't look like they will, not until the end of the offseason at least. I was stunned. I did not see this coming at all. I don't think many people saw it coming. Obviously, there's going to be questions about Drake Baldwin and Sean Murphy, and there'll be time for all that. But just this move alone was a stunning development in a day that was supposed to be pretty boring, and it turned into not boring very quickly.
I love a great deal, but I'm not going to run sprints in the outfield just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. With Mint Mobile, it really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan. Purchase and activation is super easy too.
To get started, go to mintmobile.com/territory. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number.
To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/territory. That's mintmobile.com/territory. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/territory.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on their first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
So again, a day of questions and answers. And so when the news of Travis d'Arnaud's option being declined occurred, as Stephen mentioned, many thoughts were out there, especially with the fact that Alex Anthopoulos was so straightforward when he mentioned in the end of the year exit interviews that Travis d'Arnaud's option was going to be picked up. So if Alex is sitting here mentioning this, I know he did the same thing with Kevin Seitzer, and Kevin Seitzer was eventually fired. But it just seems weird that with how highly Travis d'Arnaud is spoken of, and obviously Anthopoulos was so quick to say we're going to pick up the option, it just didn't make sense as to why Travis d'Arnaud's option was declined. Unfortunately, we may have gotten a bit of a clue a little bit later on Monday. The biggest news of all, and the most unexpected news of all, even more than Travis d'Arnaud's option being declined, was announced on Monday night. Joe Jimenez, who was a top 15 reliever in baseball this year in terms of FWAR, it was announced, unfortunately, that he is going to be undergoing surgery on his knee to repair cartilage in his knee. And the projected turnaround time, the projected rehab time that he can return is anywhere from 8 to 12 months. In other words, there is a good chance, there's at least a realistic chance that Joe Jimenez will not pitch in 2025. Now, on the surface, it may seem that the Travis d'Arnaud decision and the Joe Jimenez injury news may not have that much to do with each other. But when you consider the fact that Travis d'Arnaud was expected to make $8 million in 2025, and Joe Jimenez was, I just think, a little bit under that, Stephen, in terms of salary, it seems like when we're asking what could have made Alex Anthopoulos go from being so absolute during his exit interview to this unexpected news of Travis d'Arnaud's option being declined, something unexpected could have happened. This Joe Jimenez injury may be it. Not saying that it is, but I do think the two are related. And obviously, the idea of the Braves being without Joe Jimenez in 2025 is a pretty big deal and another need that arises this offseason to fill.
Yeah. I mean, their salaries are almost identical. I think Jimenez is for 2025, I think Jimenez was at $9 million, and I think d'Arnaud is at $8 million. So it's very possible that the Braves, not expecting this Joe Jimenez news, realize that they're going to have to go out and now add to the bullpen. spend more money than they were thinking they were going to have to, and realize that they could save a little bit of that money if they declined Darno's option. To be clear, we don't know that that's exactly what happened or exactly their train of thought, but you can see the logic where if unexpectedly you now have to spend money on your bullpen that you weren't planning on having to spend, then you got to free that money up somewhere else. So yeah, I mean, it absolutely could have been part of the calculus when they learned about Joe Jimenez. For that news, that, I mean, out of nowhere, just out of left field, Justin Toscano of the AJC just tweeted out, "Oh, by the way, the Braves' second best reliever is probably going to miss all of 2025." And it was like, good Lord. Like we did this all last year. All of 2024 was basically just us waiting on tweets like that all year. It was just that was the entire 2024 season. And you thought when the 2024 season ended that maybe some of that would end as well, but we couldn't even get 2 hours into 2025 free agency. And we've already got a player that's out for almost, possibly the entire 2025 season. At the very least, it's going to be, July or August before Joe Jimenez is back. So, and who knows what he's going to be like when he gets back after missing that much time. So, I mean, just a brutal blow. I can't believe we already have a 2025 basically season-ending injury, and we haven't even started free agency yet for the 2025 season. I mean, it's unbelievable, and it's a huge blow. I mean, Joe Jimenez, like you said, it was a top 15 reliever last year. If Iglesias didn't have just an unreal season, he would have been the Braves' best reliever. And he was obviously going to be counted on to be a huge part of that bullpen. I'm curious to see if this changes anything with AJ Minter, who the Braves obviously know is a high leverage reliever, but he's a free agent. I don't know if they have any interest. They've got a hole in the back of that bullpen now that they got to fix. And like you said, that's money that they're going to have to spend that they weren't maybe, they maybe weren't counting on having to spend. And maybe they looked at Travis's $8 million and said, this is a place where we can potentially save, especially when our top prospect in the system is a catcher. So the two could be connected for sure, but it sucks. It just sucks. Like, I'm so sick of injuries. The fact that we already have a 2025 injury and the 2025 season hasn't even freaking started yet is unbelievable. It's just a chef's. I need 2024 to end. I need the year. I thought the baseball season ending would do it, but apparently not. I just need the year 2024 to end because apparently the whole damn thing is cursed, and we can't get out of this year fast enough.
Absolutely. And the thing that I'll say is this, is that, we've talked about it multiple times throughout the offseason so far, Stephen, and in particular, the pitching staff, is that as good as this starting staff was, there are legitimate questions, I feel, up and down the starting staff where you think they're going to be very good once again, but don't know if they're going to be near the top of the league. But the one part of this team that you didn't really question was the back end of the bullpen. Yeah, Raisel Iglesias may not have been as good as he was in 2024, but you had a feeling that this back end of the bullpen was going to be very, very good. And now it's just, again, it's basically the ripple effect from 2024. We couldn't have just had it end with 2024 season. We've now got to sit here and see all these injuries that occur in 2024, question whether or not some of our best players coming back are going to be good. I mean, I'm not saying that Joe Jimenez is to the level of a Ronald Acuna Jr. or a Spencer Strider, but that's the big thing about it. It's not just the fact that these players are coming back from injury. It's the fact that how long is it going to take them to be back to being the difference makers that they were before injury? And that's what is really, really frustrating. Plus, it puts more emphasis on Chris Sale continuing to be a difference maker at the level that he was. Marcell Ozuna continuing to be a difference maker at the level that he was. Raisel Iglesias as well. It's the ripple effect from 2024, and I know we're at the start of the offseason. We have plenty of time to be able to make up for it, but I'm just wanting to point out that Joe Jimenez was part of a duo that was one of the strengths of our team, and part of a duo of an aspect of this team you want to be strong in the postseason, and now it's just one more thing we've got to replace.
Yeah. I mean, I will say this. I'll make a couple of points here. Alex is very good at building bullpens. He's always done a really good job at building bullpens going back to, since he's been here, but the famous example is 2021 where he built that whole night shift bullpen. And obviously they were a huge part of the World Series team. And every year, I mean, the Braves, I can't remember a year, maybe 2020, that short year, weird year, the Braves didn't have a ton of pitching. But other than that, he's always built a really good bullpen. So Alex is very good at this. And so I have full confidence that he can do it. The other point I'll make is that this did happen at the beginning of the offseason where every single reliever who's going to be available is still available. Every single trade target that is out there is still out there. Like it is better that this happened now instead of like in, March, where your options are severely decreased. Your ability to cover it up is, severely hampered. Like it's early enough where the Braves can still, completely remake the bullpen into something really strong for 2025. So it sucks for Joe. He had an awesome year last year. He was going to be, 2025. I have to go back and look at his contract. I can't remember if it was a 2-year contract or a 3-year contract, but I think 2025 was going to be his free agent year. Or maybe he had one more year left on his deal. I don't quite remember, but either way, he was probably set up for a decent payday after the year he had in 2024. And if he was able to repeat it in 2025. So I do feel bad for him, but Alex is very good at building bullpens. And I do think he'll be able to, I don't know if declining Travis's option was all about his money and freeing up his money to spend in that area. We'll see exactly what happens. And it's not a guarantee that Travis is not going to be back, but he's not going to be back at $8 million. We know that. And, Alex is probably going to use some of those savings to bolster the bullpen, but it is actually better that it happened this early. So all of your options are available. Anybody you want to sign has not signed yet. Anybody you want to trade for has not been traded yet. So there is benefit to happening this early where you've got time to cover it up.
From what I'm seeing, I think that he signed a 3-year, $26 million deal at the beginning before the 2024 season. So he would have been in year 2 of basically a 3-year.
It was a 3-year deal. Okay.
And I think that Pierce Johnson had the 2-year deal with an option.
Yeah, I get those two mixed up. I couldn't remember who signed the 2 and who signed the 3.
Yeah, and no doubt, Joe Jimenez especially looked like a steal last year. And again, do want to point out that the good that there won't say it's a good thing, but this isn't an arm injury, right? Like this is an injury to his knee. So potentially when he comes back, maybe it doesn't take as long for him to ramp up and be good to go. This isn't like a pitcher coming off of Tommy John surgery where there's a good chance he's not going to be back to normal at any point during the year that he comes back. And the other thing is that, hey, since it's not an arm injury, but he's going to be out for a while, that's less mileage on his arm. So maybe that helps out with the bounce back. But Stephen, let's shift the focus here a little bit. So we're going to be without Travis d'Arnaud in 2025, more than likely. We're going to likely be without Joe Jimenez for a good portion of 2025. Let's get to the name that we have talked about now for 2 consecutive shows as being a pretty interesting name this offseason. And I talked about how 12 months from now, he could be a much bigger source of importance for this Braves team. But now, he possibly is your backup catcher. Now, I know the whole thing about Drake Baldwin potentially sitting on the bench 100-plus games in Atlanta, that probably is not the best thing for his development. And there's really not a lot of openings elsewhere for him to play. But for the Braves, it does seem like that this is an opportunity to really see what you've got in Drake Baldwin. Garrett Spain, a fellow writer of ours over at Battery Power, he talked about the fact that the Braves think very highly of Drake Baldwin. But Stephen, it seems like that Drake Baldwin's time could potentially be now. It just becomes very interesting to see what the Braves will decide to do. Your thoughts on just Drake Baldwin kind of being a seamless transition to being the Braves backup catcher in 2025?
Yeah, I'm not there yet. I'm not convinced that that's going to be his role. Because the Braves could still sign d'Arnaud. The Braves could still sign another backup catcher and just, and have what gives me pause is the idea of him sitting on the bench so much in Atlanta. And, Alex talked about it right when the offseason began about like how much development time catchers need and how many game reps they need, especially And again, we talked about this before about the kind of the unheralded part of catching, and the part that never gets talked about is calling games and managing a pitching staff. And that's stuff you can't, there's no stats for that. There's no way to judge exactly how well a guy's doing at that. That's something only the organization knows, and only they can track, and only they can judge. And we can't publicly, we have no idea. So I just don't know if they're going to love the idea of him sitting on the bench 100 games or however many Murphy plays next year. It could happen. Honestly, if they gave him an outfield glove in spring training and said, "Hey, you're going to catch 60 games, but then you're going to play another 40 in the outfield or DH," and still were able to give him 400 at bats, I could maybe be a little bit more on board with it. But, me and you talked about it on the last show we did. Like, Snit's plan originally was for Murphy to be like a 75-25 split of a catcher where he's catching 75% of the time. If that's the case, I mean, that's like 120, 130 games. Is Drake Baldwin going to only play for 30 games next year? Like, that just seems like a terrible use of his talent and value, quite honestly. So I don't know. I'm not there yet. I still think there's a world where the Braves sign a backup catcher for just dirt cheap. They could sign a backup catcher for the league minimum, play Murphy most of the time, bank most of the savings off d'Arnaud and use that somewhere else, and then still keep Drake Baldwin in AAA. I think it does significantly reduce the chances of Drake Baldwin getting traded, which you and I talked about was a real possibility. That doesn't seem like the case anymore. But yeah, I'm not sure I'm there yet that he's going to definitely be the backup catcher in Atlanta. I think him sitting on the bench that much, something about that just doesn't sit right with me in terms of his value and his development. I don't love that idea. And I don't think the Braves, maybe that's the plan, but I don't think that's the plan. As we sit here today, that opinion could change in 4 months, but yeah, we'll see. The Braves have a ton of talent there. Of course, having a guy like Drake Baldwin as your third catcher before d'Arnaud got declined, and now your second catcher is an enviable spot to be in terms of the amount of talent they have. But yeah, I'm not sure they're ready to just sit him on the bench for as much as I think he would sit on the bench as the backup catcher.
So Drake Baldwin potentially becomes the backup catcher. I agree with you. I think that there's reason to give him an opportunity to have another year in AAA. And if he just forces his hand, hey, you've got options out there you could sign for the cheap, maybe even cheaper than d'Arnaud. So I agree that it makes sense to probably go with the veteran catcher. But I think that the more interesting conversation, since we don't have just a clear-cut option like we do with Drake Baldwin at backup catcher, is now who potentially Alex Anthopoulos goes after to fill the role that Joe Jimenez is going to leave. Now, Daysbel Hernandez, I think, could step up and be that guy. Or excuse me, let me back this up. I think Daysbel Hernandez could step up and be a guy for the bullpen. I don't necessarily know if he's going to be a guy to the level of Joe Jimenez. Pierce Johnson, you would feel naturally could step up and fill that role as well. But the Braves have put a high priority on being deep and very deep with quality from the right-handed side in their bullpen. And Alex Anthopoulos loves going to make trades for relief pitchers who may be struggling elsewhere, but he feels can come to Atlanta and be better than they were elsewhere. Steven, what are your thoughts? There also are some attractive free agents out there, at least in terms of one-year potential deals, who could step up and deliver. Where might the Braves go to get this option in place to where they can have another reliable, potentially dominant option to put with Raisel Iglesias at the end of their bullpen in 2025?
Yeah, I think they're going to do something. I don't think they're just going to count on internal options. I love Daysbel Hernandez, but I'm not sure he's ready to be, Mr. High Leverage. Pierce Johnson did not have the best year last year, especially down the stretch, second half. He was not as reliable as he has been. I don't know if they're 100% going to be, on board with trusting him with those innings. I do think they'll go add somebody. Now, who that is, one of the reasons bullpen is one of the easiest places to add to your team because there's just so many bullpen pieces out there in baseball, bad teams, rebuilding teams that need to cut money. All of these teams have decent bullpen arms somewhere in their franchise that they are willing to give you for a certain price. And the names are literally it's too numerous to count or even name. Like, he could go 20 different places and find a really good right-handed pitcher. There are some good names on the market. It's not a massive, free agent market for relievers. There's some decent names, but nobody crazy good. Everybody's going to talk about Devin Williams with the Brewers because of, the contract stuff he's going through with the Brewers. I don't know if the Braves would get into that. It's going to be expensive. Devin Williams is one of the best relievers in baseball, and the Braves already have a closer technically. So, but yeah, I mean, I do think Alex is going to go external for this addition, though. I don't think he's going to go internal. I don't think the Braves, Brad floated the idea that maybe Griffin Canning, moves to the bullpen. If maybe that was part of the idea of the deal. I have no idea if that would work. He's not a high velocity guy, so I don't know if they would trust him in high leverage. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. We're definitely going to add right-handed high leverage reliever to our list of free agent targets, which wasn't the case, 4 hours ago. And so that's kind of what we're going to do in the next few days is try to go through some different names and see if we can find some reasonable targets. I've been reading about all the other teams and what their plans are. There's plenty of teams out there that, even good teams, that are planning on cutting money for one reason or another. If it's TV money not being as big as it used to be, or not winning at the rate they thought they would, and they need to cut payroll. There's going to be plenty of chances for the Braves to add a decent reliever, more than one decent reliever if Alex wants to. But I think they will. I think they're definitely going to add after this news. I don't think Alex is going to trust anybody internally to handle. I mean, Joe Jimenez was unbelievable last year and pitched a ton of innings. I don't think Alex is going to trust anybody internally to fill that spot. I'm guessing he goes out and gets somebody pretty damn good to fill those shoes.
So let's break this down a little bit further, because I do want to dive into this for just a second, because it excites me, right? Like I know that, relief pitching is very volatile. I know that, it probably doesn't make sense to pay a high price, but here's my thought process, Stephen. The last two closers for the Braves under Alex Anthopoulos have been Will Smith and Raisel Iglesias. Each of them have been at a 14+ million price tag, basically since the start of the 2021 season. Alex Anthopoulos is fine putting money into closers. There are
Kenley Jansen too.
Kenley Jansen as well. Very good, very good point. Kenley Jansen as well. My apologies. You're right. He spent $60 million on Kenley Jansen in 2022. You are right. Yes. Here's my point. He's fine spending money, which I get.
Yep.
But why not this time around kick the tires on seeing if you could combine an all-star closer with your current all-star closer? And here's my theory behind it. Devin Williams of the Brewers, Ryan Helsley of the Cardinals, okay? And I know that name may not necessarily be the most popular with Braves fans when it comes to past comments. But my point is that you've got those two players out there, Williams, Helsley, as well as Iglesias. All three of them, I counted right this time, Stephen, no pinky finger. All three of them, whatever, man, all three of them are free agents after this year. My point is, if you could go get a Devin Williams to put, and Helsley is already signed, I believe, for $8 million this upcoming season. Devin Williams is projected at his $10.5 million option decline, projected for somewhere between $7 to $9 million through various sites. But you go, and if the price is reasonable, you go get that player and bring them in. They could be your setup guy to Raisel Iglesias this year, and then they potentially could be the closer for 2026 and beyond with Joe Jimenez back as your setup guy. I think that there could be sense for, if the price is right, Alex Anthopoulos is going to do that. I don't think that it's likely, but I think that there is some reason to go do it, especially, again, back to those questions that we're talking about when it comes to the starting staff. If you can have two legitimate all-star level closers at the back of your bullpen for next year, that could be a huge benefit come playoff time. And I think the Braves have reason to do it, especially if they like a guy they can get now to invest in the future. And they just did it in 2023. They went out, got Pierce Johnson. They went out, got Joe Jimenez, signed him for multiple years after that. Could we see deja vu this offseason with Devin Williams or Ryan Helsley?
Yeah. I mean, you're right. Alex has always spent money on the bullpen. Always. I mean, way more money than I would ever be comfortable. Like, relievers, spending a lot of money on relievers is one of my least favorite things, quite honestly. Alex has no bones about it. He He handed Will Smith like $40 million in free agency one year. He handed Kenley Jansen like 16, 17 million. He took on the entire Raisel Iglesias contract, which is like 50 million or 45 million at the time he made that trade. He spent, like you said, the Pierce Johnson deal, the Joe Jimenez deal. He spends money on bullpens. And that's why I'm glad you brought up the idea about, Travis d'Arnaud's option being declined and this potentially being connected is because maybe he felt like he needed a little bit extra money to go shore this bullpen up. So I expect him to do that. I expect him to go get somebody really good. Like I do. I don't think they're just going to, try to patch it together. That's not his MO with the bullpen. His MO is to go be aggressive, spend money, target somebody good, bring him in. Even if you've already got a closer, even if you already got, high leverage guys, one more never hurts. And, I could have made this argument even before Joe Jimenez went down that they might have done this. They're losing AJ Minter, right? Even before Jimenez went down, they were losing AJ Minter. You could have made the argument they needed another reliever before this injury news popped. So after this injury news has popped, I don't think there's any doubt about it. He's going to go get somebody. I don't know who. I would love Devin Williams. Devin Williams is ungodly. He is an unreal reliever. Ryan Helsley with the Cardinals throws like 103 miles an hour. So if he wants to go get that guy, I'll take him too. But it's going to, I would bet money that it's going to be somebody significant, somebody somebody you've heard of. I don't know if it's going to be a closer, but I have a feeling it's going to be somebody who's pitched in the 8th or 9th inning, somebody they're comfortable giving high leverage innings to. Yeah, I think that's going to happen. I don't know if it's moved to the top of Alex's list this offseason, but it's pretty close. I mean, this is one of the most important guys on the team from last year, now almost certainly being out for most, if not all, of 2025. This need shot up the board quick, and I think it's a pivotal one, and I think Alex will go address it in a big way at some point before we get to spring training.
Yep, I'm just bracing for myself from when that notification occurs that the Braves have acquired Sonny Gray and Ryan Helsley in the same deal.
Scott, yeah, you and Scott together would have a heart attack.
Yes, it would definitely be nice to see. Would not enjoy that return that we would have to send to the Cardinals with whatever we would have to pay down. But you know what? Hey, that's the price of doing business. Again, I find it unlikely. I do think that the Braves are going to look to maybe go a bit more significant on offense than people speculate. But that Sonny Gray, Ryan Helsley combination, you can make it make a lot of sense. Mike Petrello of MLB.com, one of my favorite minds in baseball, I believe his last name is Petrello. He mentioned it earlier today. So that's just pure speculation. But the point is, hey, while another need is created, the good thing is it's the one area where Alex Anthopoulos has consistently found the right moves to make, and maybe it makes sense to go after an all-star level type addition. Steven, go ahead.
It is possible. I do want to say this before we sign off. It is possible that this changes the plan. Maybe the plan this offseason was to go big in left field or big at shortstop. It's very possible this changes that, where they now go a little more conservative at left field, maybe more conservative at shortstop to try to go get somebody really big for the back end of the bullpen. I don't know. We don't know how much money they have to spend. We know that they just freed up a bunch of money in the last 3 days. We're probably going to do a podcast here pretty soon, trying to go over all the savings that they did, just kind of go through payroll as the free agency starts. But yeah, it's possible this news changes their plans in a big way. It's possible it doesn't change it at all. Maybe the d'Arnaud decline was enough to give them the money they need to proceed as they were otherwise going to before this injury. But it's a significant enough need and a significant enough hole in the roster that it could very possibly change the outlook of the offseason if this all of a sudden shoots up to the number one priority on your board. I don't know that it has, but I can make the argument that it should. And we'll see what they think. We'll see how they proceed. We'll know very quickly. We'll know by the first couple of moves they make this winter, how they feel about that. And, we'll get our answers here pretty soon. And Alex is a guy that usually works pretty hard in November. Something tells me we're not going to have to wait very long. I think we're going to get some answers here probably before we get to Christmas time.
Yeah, and hey, you know what? If there is one thing that you could take away from this for those that like an exciting offseason, this just makes the direction the Braves go this offseason a little bit more unclear, and that is the perfect area where Alex Anthopoulos likes to operate. Stephen, do you have anything else for us as we wrap up this edition of the Hammer Territory podcast?
Nope. Just make sure you're subscribed. Of course, free agency officially started at 5 p.m. today, and that means at any point we could get breaking news. There's 4 of us on this podcast. Obviously, Sean and I, and Brad and Scott. And anytime news breaks, Brad and I did the show for the Solaire news, and I think we were on like 20, 30 minutes after the news broke, and that's kind of how we operate all offseason. We stay glued to the news, and as soon as something breaks, we try to get on the air and give a breakdown and a reaction. So make sure you're subscribed. YouTube, we're going to be on YouTube pretty consistently at this point. Obviously Spotify, Apple, all those normal places. But yeah, make sure you're subscribed, and we'll be here all off season.
Absolutely. And can't thank you enough. Be honest with you. I hope that we don't have to do like we did at the trade deadline and do a midnight one. But you know what? Dad burn it. If it's worth it, we'll be here. My name's Shawn Coleman. You can find me at StatsSAC, Stephen Tolbert at B_outliers. Of course, all of us here at Hammer Territory cannot thank you enough for the support that you have shown us throughout the season and now the off season. Find Hammer Territory throughout all forms of social media, a part of the Foul Territory family of podcasts. Make sure to check out Foul Territory as well. For Stephen Tolbert, my name's Shawn Coleman. Always a pleasure. We'll talk to you again here on the Hammer Territory podcast.